From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
The presidential election still 6 months away, but the campaign is on in earnest. Donald Trump is suddenly attacking Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as he worries that the third-party candidate might hurt him more than he would hurt Joe Biden. Trump also meets with Ron DeSantis to patch things up after Trump's brutal treatment of the Florida governor during the fight for the Republican nomination. How's that peace effort going, and why hasn't Trump reached out to Nikki Haley? Plus, Joe Biden meets his homies in the Washington press corps at the annual Correspondents' Dinner on Saturday, and he taunts Donald Trump, who fires back. A presidential political potpourri here on Potomac Watch. Welcome to everybody. I'm Paul Gigot with the Wall Street Journal opinion page, and I'm here with Bill McGurn and Barton Swaim. Let's talk about first Trump's attack on RFK Jr., which is interesting. He lashed out on Truth Social saying, quote, RFK Jr. is a Democrat plant, a radical left liberal who's been put in place in order to help crooked Joe Biden, the worst president in the history of the United States, get reelected. A vote for Jr. would essentially be a wasted protest vote that could swing either way. So didn't hold back there, Barton. What do you make of this Trump assault on RFK Jr.?
Yeah, always subtle, Trump. I think it's a smart move for Trump to go after RFK, particularly as a leftist. For one thing, it's true, okay?
Has that added advantage?
There are a few issues on which he's heterodox, his criticisms of the public health establishment and so on. But he supports single-payer health care, isolationism on foreign policy. I think he wants to ban the export of liquefied natural gas and so on. As a political matter, though, the more Trump criticizes RFK, the more Democrats, I think, will like him. I mean, that's been the psychology of the left for the last 8 years. Trump can say the sky is blue, and a healthy proportion of the Democratic Party is going to say, I'm not so sure the sky is blue anymore.
Right.
My guess is that as November nears and voters learn more about RFK Jr.'s actual views, Republicans are going to be a little more skeptical of him. A lot of his views are pretty consonant with the left flank of the Democratic Party, and the Trump campaign, I think, would be wise to emphasize every one of those views in detail. And if he plays it right, I think a lot of Democrats are going to look at Robert Kennedy and say, his views are pretty good, and he's not senile.
Well, it's interesting that Trump is doing this because for a long time, earlier this year in the primaries and last year in particular, Fox News and other conservative venues gave RFK Jr. an awful lot of airtime. And he used it to talk about his skepticism toward vaccines, his hostility to immigration. He's a hawk on the border. RFK Jr. is, at least for now. And I wonder if that hasn't backfired a bit on the right here, because a lot of those people who heard that message were receptive to it, Bill.
Yeah, I agree with Barton that I think that the more Trump highlights his left-wing views, the better be for Trump. But I will say I detect among Trump voters, and I'm surprised by it, a lot of support for Kennedy, I think, is kind of not a lot of information. They hear him saying similar things about the public health experts that Trump says, and they have a vague thing. And a lot of people think the whole system is corrupt, Biden and Trump included, the whole parties, and this guy is not. He's a Don Quixote running his own campaign. But mitigating against that, I think, Paul, as you were suggesting, some of his views, if he wants to lead the left flank of his party, kind of like his father did before he was assassinated in 1968, I think one of the issues you didn't mention, he's been a real hawk on Israel. So all these left-wing protests on campuses and across the country, RFK is on the other side. He's firmly backing Israel. So that, I think that mitigates some of his potential support, because I'm not sure they all realize that. But once they do, I don't think they're going to vote for him. So he's kind of an enigma now. I think in the end, as people realize his views and where he lies on the spectrum, I think he'd probably still siphon more votes than Joe Biden when November rolls around than Donald Trump. But I think Trump is wise to highlight his views and attack them for what they are, very left-wing.
So the ultimate influence of RFK Jr. in this campaign will depend in part on whether he can get on all 50 state ballots, or at least certainly the swing state ballots. And then could he possibly get on a debate stage if there are debates? Let's listen to RFK Jr. on Bill Maher's HBO show.
This is the first presidential election in history where independents will be the biggest, self-identified independents are the biggest demographic. It's 43% of the American
You're
electorate.
only on the ballot in 3 states.
Me?
Yeah, aren't you?
Yeah, but that's a different question.
Well, that's a path. You got to be on. You got to be on the ballot too.
I'm going to be on that. I'm going to be on the ballot.
You're going to be on the ballot in all the states?
I can guarantee you I will be on the ballot in every state.
Really?
Very, very quickly.
There's news.
Well, that would be news, but I'm not so sure he's going to be very, very quickly if he does get on the ballot in all these states, Barton. And it's interesting, there's a new poll out, and the polls that this far out are mere snapshots, as the cliche has it. But the CNN poll has Trump beating Biden by 6 points among registered voters in a head-to-head. And with a third party and fourth, fifth party entered, Trump still wins, and by even more. He's at 42% to Biden's 33%. RFK Jr. at 16%, Cornel West at 4%, and Stein at 3%. Those are the two. The last two are left-wing gadfly candidates. Barton, you surprised at that spread? I guess that's consistent with your point that RFK Jr. would hurt to Biden more than Trump.
I mean, I've gone back and forth on this. When you hear RFK talk about the vaccines or public health establishment or just experts in general, you think, okay, I can see him stealing votes from Republicans. Can I just say, back up a second? I mean, one problem with RFK is his voice.
Yeah, sure is.
Having him on a debate stage could hurt him more than anything. But I just still think that his long association with the Democratic Party, his until now outspokenly left-wing views. I mean, he was an environmental lawyer. I just can't see Republicans supporting somebody who gives a lot of credence to climate change and so on, even though he's somewhat soft-pedaled that lately. So with 3 basically left-wing candidates on the Democratic side, that's hurting Biden more than I thought. It's pretty incredible.
All right, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll have more on the presidential race, including debates. Could we have them when we come back? Welcome back. I'm Paul Gigot here on Potomac Watch with Bill McGurn and Barton Swaim. And speaking of debates, as we were, the possibility of RFK Jr. making the stage, probably an unlikely prospect, but nonetheless, Joe Biden told Howard Stern last Friday. Biden doesn't do interviews with the mainstream press, but he did do Howard Stern on his Sirius radio show. And he said that he is willing to debate Trump, though he's not sure when that would be. And of course, Trump jumped on that and said, I'll do it tonight, tomorrow night, the next night, anytime, anywhere. So the Republican candidate who refused to debate his fellow Republicans in the primaries now can't wait to get into the ring with Biden. I'm not so sure, Bill, that there will be debates, however. I think if Biden is leading in the polls, I don't think he will debate in the end. What do you think?
I think that's a good bet. You know, people always say they should, and of course voters expect it, but it's a cold calculation. If his handlers feel that he's not up to that kind of challenge, that it'd do more harm than good, I think they'd rather take the hit for having no debate than risk a moment that comes to define Joe Biden and cost him the election. So I'm not necessarily assured either that there'll be debates, even though I think people want them. I think there's no constitutional requirement, for example, but I think it's one of the things that candidates owe us, and especially a sitting president. If he wants to be reelected, he has to do it. I think Trump will debate because even though he's ahead in most of the polls, he's kind of the underdog. And he likes the stage. So I think he will debate, but I'm not sure Biden's people will let him do it.
Barton Trump, of course, has abiding confidence in his ability to do just about anything. And that includes debating, even though he's manifestly not a great debater. Not an awful one. He often wins them, but I thought had a horrible first debate in 2020 against Biden, and that hurt him. But he wants to get on the stage this time. And what do you think? You think it's likely to take place, or is this all just Biden saying, oh, sure, I'll debate him, but then say, well, he's not going to play by the rules. Trump is nasty and he'll lie and we don't have to do it.
Right. I think they're better advised to take that route. I mean, I agree with Bill that it's probably not going to happen. But, you mentioned that 2020 debate. That was the worst debate in history.
It's a low bar.
and primarily because Trump was terrible, just mean. He shouted. And, they could reason that he'll do that again. And just the spectacle of it could create some sympathy for Biden. I mean, it's kind of pathetic that this is where we are. But I think a debate, Biden's not going to try to say that much. And what he does say won't be impressive. But he could goad Trump into just behaving like a beast, as he did 4 years ago. So, it's a toss-up.
All right. That's going to be interesting to watch. Also, reports over the weekend that Trump met in a private meeting with the Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Of course, Trump famously crushed DeSantis in the GOP primaries. And there's a sign here that perhaps Trump is trying to patch things up with elements of the Republican Party that he had scorched in the primary. Apparently, it was an attempt by Trump to get DeSantis with his vast fundraising network to help him raise money. Notable to me, Bill, this is a private meeting, not public. It was brokered by a mutual donor friend. It was not Trump reaching out himself, according to the report, to DeSantis. But my own view of this is that this is late for Trump. He should have been doing this right after he won the last primaries, where it was still a contested primary, and bring him back into the tent. And it's surprising to me that he hasn't been more aggressive in this. And he needs DeSantis. He needs DeSantis's help, just like he needs Nikki Haley's help. And he hasn't reached out to her, at least as far as we know.
Yeah, I mean, it's common that there's bitter fights in the primary, right? And people say things that they later have to eat or kind of are not easily reconcilable with the new stance. Remember, George H.W. Bush denounced Reagan for his voodoo economics. The difference with Donald Trump is that so many of his attacks are personal. I think Nikki Haley was bird brain and DeSantis was DeSanctimonious. It's a little harder for people to take the personal attacks and come back and be enthusiastic about the guy who beat you then. I think he can do it, but I think his work is cut out for him. Why he's not going after Nikki Haley, I don't know. He seems to be of the opinion that it's up to them to come to him, but I'm not sure that's true. Many of them have come right over pretty enthusiastically, but I would think that he would redouble efforts to get her in his camp and present a unified front on defeating Joe Biden and his policies.